Every bit it counts.
She said call when you get to 8.
That's right.
Should be watching.
Why?
All right, are we ready to rock and roll? All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Good evening, and welcome to the committee meetings for April 15th, 2025. The elected body president, Mayor Kurt Wilson. Councilmember Christine Hall will return shortly. Councilmember Alan Sells. Councilmember David Johnson. Councilmember Sarah Beeson. Councilmember G. Lee Hills. Councilmember William Morthland. I'm Randy Knighton, the CEO, along with the CLO, Chief Legal Officer, David Davidson, and Executive Assistant to the Council and Deputy Clerk, Michelle Miller. The purpose of committee meetings are for the city departments, to convey information to Mayor and City Council and discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda, as well as provide updates of vital information of city governance. And by ordinance, the committee consists of Mayor and Council, as well as the city administrator, CEO. This is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. Therefore, while we certainly welcome members of the public, do not generally take questions from the public unless specifically authorized by Mayor and Council. And public meetings and questions, of course, are received the second and fourth Monday of each month. City Council chambers at the regularly scheduled Mayor and Council meetings, as well as fifth Monday in open forum. We do always invite and encourage residents to reach out to us and to our city departments if you have any questions or need information. Also, you can report issues to the city web service portal, and we always invite everyone to view Roswell365.com for a calendar of events. Remind everyone of this coming Thursday, our first session of Alive in Roswell, this coming Thursday. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the committee meeting minutes for March 25th, 2025. I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Councilmember Beeson, second by Councilmember Johnson. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, that passes. Thank you very much. The second item is listed on the agenda under administration. Consideration for the mayor and/or city administrator to sign a contract with Georgia Interlocal Risk Management Agency, GIRMA, in an amount not to exceed $1,286,981 payable through Arthur J. Gallagher and Company for property casualty and banishment liability insurance for the city of Roswell for the coverage period of May 1, 2025 through April 30th, 2026, and additional amounts of $112,838 for cyber insurance through Travelers Insurance and $6,480 for drone liability insurance through Global Aerospace for a total not to exceed of $1,406,299. Mr. Davidson.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. This is really great news. The city had a increased insurable value of over $63.8 million, and we got an insurance decrease this year for our property casualty and liability. The decrease is approximately $40,000 because we no longer have to buy flood insurance because GIRMA has agreed to cover flood insurance, which is a federal requirement for cities. So from that perspective, it's great. The cyber insurance did go up $500, which is not bad. And drone insurance is going up about $1,500, but we have more drones this year than we did previously. So that's the cause for that. This contract will be for 1 year. Our normal process is to rebid our insurance carrier every three to 5 years. The last time we did that was in 2022. The idea would be to check the markets next year and probably go out for a full bid next year, depending on what comes back. We have an independent broker with Gallagher Bassett. Senior Vice President Brendan Hensley is here, who represents the city on these matters. He can answer any questions you might have regarding how the markets have done this year. I can tell you this, there's probably not a decrease for very many people in insurance values, especially when you add $64 million worth of property. And that does not even include vehicles. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but recommend approval.
Questions, Mr. Davidson? Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Just a quick statement. David, thank you for your hard work, getting it done, delivering real value to the city of Roswell. Thank you, sir. Thanks for your work.
Thank you. Councilmember Sells.
I mean, he'll talk more than me, so.
What was in the budget for this line item? Do you recall?
I think it's 1.5 million, so we're under budget.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other, yes, Councilmember, oh, I'm sorry. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion. Motion by Councilmember Beeson, second by Councilmember Johnson. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, that passes. Thank you very much. Item number 3 is listed on the agenda, consideration of a craft beer and wine market ordinance update. Mr. Davidson?
Thank you. This update would allow for the addition of one distilled spirit to be consumed on the premises of a craft beer and wine market. Currently, they can only provide consumption of craft beers or wines. This would allow one distilled spirit to be sold in conjunction with that. And we define it, distilled spirit as whiskey, vodka, gin, tequila, or rum. And all the other requirements would remain the same. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Question by Councilmember Beeson.
Clarify based off how you just described it, they would still be required to serve craft beer and/or wine in addition to the singular distilled spirit?
That is correct.
Okay, and is there a reason why they can't just sell the singular distilled spirit?
Because it's a craft beer and wine market. There are, in our regulations and in state law, there's certain distance requirements for distilled spirits that don't exist for beer and wine. So
So it's a state law?
Right.
Got it, thanks.
All right, Councilmember Hills.
Thank you. This falls under the full pouring license, right? All ABC's liquor, beer, and wine.
that's correct.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Mayor Wilson.
David, what were the 4 or 5 spirits that you mentioned that are applicable?
Whiskey, vodka, gin, tequila, or rum.
So whiskey is just broad. It could
Very
be
broad.
Irish whiskey,
Yes.
bourbon, scotch. Good whiskey, bad whiskey. Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And this is Christine. This is Christine's, by the way. Christine's not here, too. That's right. She's having a whiskey.
Make sure to include the bourbon.
All right. Further questions or comments regarding this item? Are you looking to move this? I'm sorry, Councilmember Morthland.
For someone that comes in and applies for this that is going to do the singular spirit, but then decides they're going to push the edge and potentially try to serve 2 and get caught, what is the penalty for someone getting caught?
So they could risk losing their entire license.
Mayor Wilson.
It's interesting, Mr. Knighton, that Will always is pushing the lines of legal thought process of what can and cannot be done. So we know where his mind goes. Thanks, Christine, for pushing this. Thank you for David for pushing this. This is a measure that I think Christine is trying to accelerate the activity of some businesses and small businesses in Roswell, giving them an additional opportunity for success. So thank you for considering this and putting it forward as a means of not creating bars, but as a means of creating an additional potential niche revenue source for a few businesses in Roswell that meet the kind of unique and clever charm of the city. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Further questions or comments? I'm assuming you want a formal recommendation to move this forward for
Yes,
the mayor and
please.
council to consider the ordinance? Yes, all right. Motion by Councilmember Hills, second by Councilmember Morthland. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Item number 4 under Finance. Consideration to approve a resolution declaring the City of Roswell's intent to issue second tranche of general obligation bonds and for other purposes. Our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Bill Godshaw, will present the item.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. So tonight, I want to provide a little bit of background on the bond issuance and our recommendation to proceed with second tranche and what that would involve. Quick history on the first bond tranche. We came to Mayor and Council on November 8th, 2022 for a notice of intent and resolution. On May 22nd, the resolution was adopted to sell the first tranche of bonds, and on June 8, 2023, the bonds were closed and issued, what I would refer to as bring down. Just as a reminder, in 2022, the bond referendum approved 3 questions with substantial majorities for approval. Question 1, address recreation and parks. Question 2, address public safety. And question 3, address the downtown public parking deck. The amount that we brought down in the first tranche was $53.1 million for recreation and parks, $13.1 million for public safety, and $20 million for public parking deck, which came to a total of $86.2 million. Some of the parks projects that are currently underway would include Big Creek, East Sands 1, East Roswell Park, and Roswell Area Park. Under public safety, currently under process is the acquisition of sharpshooters and conversion to 911, as well as Summit as our new public safety headquarters. And then just recently approved by this body in April was the contract to begin building on the parking deck itself. Okay. I apologize, I'm missing a slide. I was gonna call attention to the bond projects that are currently under design. On the 911 call center, we're projected to complete that at the end of this year, 2025. For public safety, we're projected to complete that during 2025. And then fire station number 27 would be completed in 2027. The Riverside Park is projected for 2026. Don White is projected for 2027. Roswell Area Park Pond is projected 2026, as is Grindbridge Park turf fields. And then as of the parking deck, the contract was awarded in April 2025, and then the projected completion is May 4th, 2026. Not just 2026, May 4th, 2026. So movement between the 2 tranches, because of some opportunistic situations that Mayor and Council faced, we had to move a little bit of money around from question 1, Parks and Recreation, to question 2, Public Safety, to allow us to take advantage of opportunities that the market presented us around sharpshooters and around Summit. Also, currently spent and under contract is $21 million for parks and $17 million for public safety. And while that looks like $21 million might be a lot, that is committed to be spent in full before the end of the 3rd quarter, which brings us to the need to raise a second tranche. We will issue by referendum. The goal is to issue $65.2 million under question 1, $28.2 million under question 2, and that issuance will rebalance the bond questions from what were originally approved by the public without further resolution or amendment. Also, these amounts do not include premiums received on sales of the bonds or the interest earnings associated with the bonds. That'll be a wrap-up when we undertake what we call the arbitrage review to make sure that we've spent the funds in a timely fashion and we don't owe the IRS any money at the end of the projects. So just a prettier presentation. Recreation Parks would be $65.2 million. Public Safety would be $28.2 million for a grand total of $93.4 million. Looking at a projected timeline, coming here tonight to introduce to committee the approval intent and notice We will bring the actual approval intent and notice of sale resolution to mayor and council in the meeting on Monday, the 28th. We would post a notice of sale and a preliminary offering statement on Friday, June 13th. We expect at the mayor and council meeting on Monday, June 23rd, to sell the bonds, at which point we would ask you to adopt the resolution to formally price and sell those bonds, and then the bring down or the closing of the cash would occur by July 15th, all of this year. A couple other noteworthy items. We are recommending that we sell the bonds at a premium. This would be a few basis points or interest percentage above market, which allows us to bring in additional cash, upwards of $2 to $3 million. This provides more flexibility during project execution, but it does not exceed the legal question if the loan is approved, and that it allows us to take advantage of market conditions as they exist if this is possible. Some of the assumptions that are, so the other thing we want to address is millage rate impact. $93.4 million of tax exempt. We expect at this point, given current market conditions, that the true cost estimate would be 4.5%. The value of 1 mil as of our estimate on the 24 tax digest, the 25 tax digest has just come out. We haven't had a chance to run our numbers on it. Is that right, Lynn? We just got it. So we haven't had a chance to run through what the effect is, but we think the value of mill right now is 8.8 million. We believe that would go up slightly if any amount that's significant. Because of the increase in the value of a mill, we believe that the millage increase would be 0.3 mils. If you recall, the millage increase for debt service on the first tranche was 0.8 mils. So we've had some benefits between interest earned, premium, and the value of the tax digest that we should be saving at 0.3 mils this time around. This increase in millage will not impact the tax bill in 2025, but it will come in a tax bill in 2026. And then the estimated impact to the average Roswell taxpayer who owns an average price home of $575,000 would be $69 a year. And then I've summarized what the millage rates would be, assuming maintenance and operations are held constant. We would go from 0.9 to 1.2 for a total millage of 4.949 to 5.249. And that's my presentation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gottschall. Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill, thank you. Thank you for your work. There's some stuff in there that you have actually delineated in very fine fashion and actually made some decisions kind of ahead of the curve in your presentation versus when we did the first tranche. So thank you for that. Very well done. Good stuff. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Councilmember Beeson.
Thanks. All right, two questions. The first of which is, you had mentioned the option of taking on a slightly higher interest rate in order to have more cash to leverage for the projects. Is that going to impact the millage rate impact for the bond debt?
No, the millage rate contemplates that premium.
Okay. Got it. In that case, then, I do not have a second question. I'm good.
All right. Yes, Councilmember Sells.
Help me out with a little math. By the way, I just want to say, appreciate your leadership on this bond issue. I'm talking with those guys, and that's a lot of work, so I appreciate that. And I'm glad you're here to guide us through this process. I know you've done this a bunch of times, and so I'm very pleased you're here and riding herd on this. So 30.3 mils is about $2.7 million, $2.8 million or so. Does that sound reasonable?
Close, Lynn?
I mean, 8.8 times 0.3 is what I'm working on, right? So close to, yeah, 2.7 or so. And so how does that cover the 4.5 on the 93? Because that seems like that'd be, closer to 4 million total. So
So we'll be collecting the 0.9, which, based on the amount that we already have in the debt service fund,
okay,
We'll-
gotcha. So the 12 covers the whole. It's not the 0.3 covers it.
right, because the
Gotcha,
millage
gotcha.
hasn't changed, but the digest has increased, right? The value of a mill has gone up. So that 0.9,
Picking up the others.
we don't have to increase as much as we originally forecasted on the first issuance.
That's right. That's
Excellent,
That covers my question.
excellent.
That's why. That's what the difference was.
Thank you for that. Thank you for
Thought
that
it was gonna be a
clarification,
lot
and thank you
higher,
for that
actually.
stewardship.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Right, and as just another kind of point of history on this, the original recommendation when it was brought to mayor and council was to do the 2020, to do the second tranche in spring of 2025. So we're actually right on schedule. Where the benefit we have is the continued increase in the value of a mill, as well as, rates are up a little bit, but not significantly. Let's see, what's today, Tuesday? I got that
Fresh.
from our investment advisor on Saturday.
It's fresh.
It's
It's
It's fresh, but it may not be final. I just want to caution mayor and council that the rates are moving up and down.
All right, any further questions or comments? All right.
Just well done. Just well done. You can see the deliberation and the distinction from the first tranche to the second tranche. Like, there's a couple pieces in there we went over, just to keep from a time perspective. There's some things Bill's done that matter, and they're going to matter in the course of the second tranche. So, Bill, thank you. It makes a big difference that you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no further questions or comments, we'll entertain a motion.
Motion to move it forward.
Motion by Councilmember Hall, second by Councilmember Sells. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, thank you, sir. Item number 5 is listed on the agenda under Economic Development. Item number 5, Economic Development Quarterly Report, Quarter 1, 2025, and the Sear World LLC Master Services Agreement Report. Mr. Leatherman will handle that item. And as he is preparing his presentation, I will mention that for information purposes, item number 9, we will forego that item this evening and then perhaps bring that back at a later date. So item number 9 will not be considered this evening. All right, Mr. Leatherman.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I have the opportunity to present our Economic Development Quarterly Report, as well as the SEER Master Services Agreement Quarterly Report. Just want to note, as we get started, you'll see the dates there on the cover page. We are closing out the 2024 year with November and December. We did provide a report all the way through October. As the mayor and council knows, and for our community's benefit, once again, we have switched to a calendar year budget. And so as we work through quarterly reports, you'll see this from various departments, including our economic development department, of getting our quarterly reports onto a traditional quarterly cycle. And so this is our opportunity essentially to catch up from 2024 and also close out the first quarter of 2025. I'll be going through kind of our economic development strategy, and then at the end of the report, we'll talk about the SEER Master Services Agreement and their integral part in our economic development process and strategy moving forward. Just as some reminders, and I think it's important to set the stage for our economic development strategy and where we've started. In 2022, we began the process of really developing what our economic development strategy was and is for the city. That included, in July of 2024, a report to the mayor and council and to our community of our economic development strategy. We outlined our goals and objectives, what we were going to grow into, what we were optimizing and integrating into our overall strategy. And that really began the process of implementation in various projects throughout the city. Again, that was in July of 2024. We started about 12 months before that, really crafting our economic development strategy for the city. We evaluated our strengths and weaknesses, the opportunities and threats. Focused quite a bit on our weaknesses as a community, and we'll talk a little bit more about those as we move forward to set the stage for the projects and the deliverables that we see both in 2024 as we close out the year, and then also in Q1 of 25. As we focus in on some of our weaknesses, I just want to reiterate, and we've talked about this on a number of occasions, some of the challenges that we're presented with from an economic development perspective. Of a number of single-family detached homes, and that's what makes Roswell special, but we also have to recognize it as something that is a challenge for us because it limits the amount of property that we have available commercially in our community for economic redevelopment and economic development. A lot of our housing stock and our building stock on the commercial side was built before 2000. 55% was built before 1990, so that presents a challenge in our aging stock around our commercial corridors that are primed for redevelopment. As we talk about it in the industry, as you see that land scarcity about grayfield redevelopment and the challenges around those, which of course we could talk about, but they are significant as we start to transition aging infrastructure properties into the standards of 25, 26, and 27, very different than when they were originally built in 1980, 1990, and even in the early 2000s. So we start to see some of the constraints around property growth in and around our community. Roswell, obviously a very old city, significant growth in 70s, 80s, and 90s. And in 90s and in 2000s, we start to see the communities growing up around us. We have to recognize that as a weakness and a constraint within the city of Roswell, that competition has entered into our marketplace. And that competition began to grow and redevelop. And in some cases, market money, capital investment went to other communities in 2000, 2010, and as recent as the last 5 years, and passed us by for various opportunities, which we have to catch up, and that is where our economic development strategy comes forward. As we think about the economic development context in and around the city, I think we have to be honest about our commercial corridors. We have to drive with our eyes wide open as you work ourselves from the east side of Roswell into the west side of Roswell. We have some commercial corridors that need support, they need redevelopment, they need commercial development, and in some cases they need the city to step in and infuse, whether it be capital investment or other incentives that we've created in and around the city. And I think it's really important that as we drive around the community that we have to understand that in some cases we have a thriving commercial development. The 92 corridor, which we've talked about quite a bit around these tables, that is not our focus. 92 corridor, as you work from Crabapple over to Target, has been redeveloped. We have great thriving infrastructure. As you work your way eastward, we have more challenges. And that really is a focus of our economic development strategy when you talk about downtown, midtown, uptown, and then the east side of our community. This is about building the flywheel of economic development momentum. Our sector strategy was developed in 2024. We have our geography that we're working our way through, again, downtown, midtown, uptown, East Roswell, thinking about what is a boundary-breaking infrastructure redevelopment project. And what we mean, how do we bring community members into the city of Roswell from outside of the city of Roswell that are here to drive our economic development strategy, spend money, support our economy, and then go home that evening or potentially after the weekend. We want to limit our growth strategically, targeting about that 120,000 person city so that we have a strategic advantage in and around the Metro Atlanta area. We need to develop tools, which we've talked about. That's our tax allocation district. That's our Roswell Redevelopment Authority, our Downtown Development Authority, all tools that have been redefined over the course of the last 2 years to help us develop the momentum that we need and moving our economic development flywheel forward. Again, our strategy is centered around downtown, midtown, uptown, and the east side. So geographically, we're working our way from the east side into the center of the city and then over into our midtown corridor. Some of the photos that you saw in earlier slides are directly from these areas of focus in and around our city. I think it's also time just we take an opportunity as we think about the challenges around economic development, and we hear, I think, a lot of conversations, and even some that I have in my own community here in Roswell, of how come we can't just snap our fingers and make that vacant parcel go away or make that vacant parcel redevelop. In fact, I had that conversation a week ago, standing in a driveway, just enjoying some weekend time of somebody pointing a finger at a map and saying that parcel needs to be different. And then we start to have this conversation of, okay, what really is the challenge with economic development? It's not just about the city just snapping our fingers and saying, okay, it's better. We have to have willing landowners that want to participate in redevelopment. We have to have market demand for a project that a landowner wants to put on their property. We have to have a capital investment. We have to have owner investment, sustainable operation plan. We have to have zoning. We have to have the right transportation and infrastructure support. That's just a small touch of then how that stair steps out to what else is required for a quality economic development project. We need to look at traffic patterns and spending habits as we understand market demands. You need to look at the risk profile. As we like to say, and I think as Councilmember Alan Sells has said many times, the capital side of economic development gets a vote in this process. They get to decide where their money is being spent. And as we saw, as growth was happening around Alpharetta and Johns Creek in the 2000s, 2010s, they were voting in other cities. That's where the development was going. And our economic development strategy has to recognize that and take that on. But that doesn't mean that we're helpless to the market strategies. We can make decisions about taxpayer investment and intervention in projects. And that's where our tools come in. We can look at property acquisition. That really is a large driver for how we make a really big decision in our community about transforming an economic development project. If we, the city, are the owner, we get a pretty big vote in what happens to that property. But we can also look at tax abatements. Parking as a service, a tax allocation district, which we formed this year, can help with investment in infrastructure. We can look at impact fee abatements. We can look at taxpayer-funded improvements. We just cut the ribbon, I think, about a half hour ago on Big Creek Parkway. That's a huge, significant infrastructure investment in our community that will help drive economic development sustainability for the future. Those are things that we have in our tool belt, but if we invest in a project, we have to do a lot more work to understand what the risk profile is of those types of investments. That's where our team from the economic development side, Mr. Conley is here as our economic development director, and SEER, that's where we have started to develop the right strategy for understanding as we get involved with taxpayer investment money, with the right strategy, what needs to be analyzed and evaluated so that we know that the taxpayers are getting good value for the projects that we are bringing forward as our economic development strategy. And this is just a breakdown of how we've started to evaluate those types of projects. And I think the premise of this is very important as we get into the SEER contract for the community and for us to understand that, again, this isn't just about waving a magic wand and all of a sudden a project shows up. We have to enter into the due diligence process with projects that we're invested in, but also projects that are happening in our community, because no matter what, they are a representation of the city of Roswell. So we have to start with the origination of projects. What does due diligence look like from a fiscal perspective? Does this truly meet the expectations of our economic development strategy, but does it also create economic development revenue in some cases for the city? Or does it create a better place to live in some cases for the city? All of that is part of our evaluation as we go through the checklist, through the process of our deal structure. So origination is very early in the process where we do a feasibility analysis. We start to understand the project, understand the development, understand the developers who are proposing projects in the city of Roswell. And then we transition into a more formal structure, and you see those come forward to the city of Roswell in the form of a letter of intent. That means that we've done some of our preliminary due diligence. We have confidence that a project meets our expectations within the city and is ready to move forward into the next stage. That doesn't mean it's done and ready to go. It's ready to move forward into the next stage of evaluation, which we put a higher level of scrutiny on a project to ensure that it actually can be delivered in the way that we expect it. We collaborate on the design, negotiate and finalize agreements. We draft the feasibility analysis yet again, and then deliver that for implementation. As you think about just one project, we're working on Hill Street right now, you break that process down. Here's all of the different agreements that are potentially possible within just one development that we're involved with in order to propel a project forward, but also protect the taxpayer's investment. We have our LOI execution. We have coordination with the DDA. We have a scope of work with the DDA, preliminary due diligence, which we're right in the middle of right now. That transitions into formal due diligence, parking contractor selections, parking agreements, operating agreements, and schematic design approvals, all just for one project. So this isn't multiple projects, that's just one project. And then it further breaks down even further as you take any one of those bullet points and you have additional checklists of how do we move projects forward in the city of Roswell. This is a purposeful, intentional process that we go through with all of our projects. It also takes partnerships. We have developed partnerships on behalf of the community, on behalf of the city, with SEER, our Roswell Development Authority, Select Fulton, our state of Georgia, True North, Georgia Power, GDOT, all significant partners in various developments that we have around our community. And that transitions into the results that we've had thus far. This looks back over the last about 12 to 18 months of what have we delivered in the momentum thus far. And I would just encourage anybody that is thinking about our community and wondering, okay, what is it that we've accomplished over the last 5 or 10 or 12 months? I know a lot of my neighbors, sometimes they jump into what's going on with the city, and 3 months later, after they're having fun with their kids or doing whatever else, they ask the question, okay, well, what's really going on with the city? RoswellConnections.com is a great place to go. It is the repository, there we go, of all of our process and products moving forward. This is based on economic development. This is in our bonds. You can find information on our park projects, and you can go back in history. The challenge with social media, if you're using that as your kind of sole point of information, is old information gets buried at the bottom of the list, sometimes 2 or 5 or 10 pages ago if you're looking on Facebook, and you don't actually see the relevant information that you may be looking for. That's why we created Roswell Connections. Our communications team, the leadership there with Senior Vice President Joe Panino has really been working on optimizing this for the community so that we're able to deliver the information that the community is looking for in a real consolidated way. So please go, from a community member's perspective, use this website. You can look at things like Big Creek Parkway, what we're doing with PBS Aerospace, which I'll talk about in a minute, all of the bond projects, how we're looking and thinking about soccer in the future, and of course our Hill Street mixed-use development that we're currently working on. That takes us to our master services agreement with SEER. Integral in all of the process that you heard earlier, this is a master services agreement. It has a $2 million limit that will reset here in 2025 in April, really probably the first week of May. We have the final report of 2024 and 25, and then again in Q1 of 2020 or 24, and then in Q1 of 25. These are the projects that are currently in process. Going back to our deal structure and origination, we have United Soccer League, West Alley, Chambray Hotel, Riverwalks Mixed Use Medical. We're working on Roswell Town Center. Further down the line, that we've gotten more into the deal structure and implementation process, Hill Street Development. It's been great to welcome PBS Aerospace into our community. We had them moved in 3 days ahead of time. Their deadline was moved into their temporary office space April 1. We had it moved in the Thursday before that. I think it was the 29th of March, and they are now a proud member of the Roswell community working out of their building. So super proud of the team and the work that they've done there. Public Safety Center, and of course our tax allocation district that we talked about. The tax allocation district is not done. I just want to note that we still have policies that we need to develop for the tax allocation district, and those will be coming forward. So there is continued work that we have moving forward here as we develop our tools. To close out 2024, these are the actives, or were the active scopes of work, all the way through to number 6. As you saw earlier, these are the projects that SEER is involved with. As you see there, you have the balance of the scope of work as of December 2024. So there is still money available, and was still money available in December for those scopes that we were continuing to work on. There were a couple of them that were closed out, the site utilization plan and the parking business model, both scopes where the deliverables were closed out in December of 2024. If you look down at the bottom, you'll see this on the next slide. You have the authorized amount of $2 million in the contract, the remaining amount of $583,000. That's the remaining amount in the contract that could be encumbered under a scope of work, but had not been at that time. So we look at 2025, so Q1, the first 3 months. Only addition to this scope of work was number 7 under our communications, $97,000. You see the contract remaining amount has changed. And then you have the scope of work balance has also changed as we paid on those scopes throughout the first quarter of 2025. We will continue to use this form and format. I want to thank Bill and the finance team for helping us to clarify this as we move forward from quarter to quarter so that everybody will be able to track where we are in the various processes of our scopes. I'll spend just a couple of minutes talking about what's next for Q2. We're going to be working on further defining our scopes of work and deliverables with SEER in Q2 based on our project life cycle that I described earlier. So you will see projects in the pre-due diligence, origination, letter of intent, implementation, and completion stage so that the community and for the council has absolute clarity on where we are in the process of those projects. We'll also be working on clarifying scope of work number 1. If you recall, originally scope of work number 1 was a very kind of broad scope of work, had a lot of tasks in it. We've been breaking those out through the various scopes from 1 down to 7. We're going to refine how we define scope of work number 1 for economic development strategy. That includes our weekly meetings. We see the SEER team Tuesdays and Thursdays embedded in with the city of Roswell working on a regular basis. on regular staff and council briefings. They're working on pre-due diligence projects, landowner coordination, prospective developer coordination, and project management. So we're going to redefine how scope of work number 1 works here in quarter 2. Of course, we'll be reporting that back when we bring back our quarterly report in 3 months. Also, we're going to be working on a scorecard in quarter 2. This is really just a quick example of the types of things that will be included on our scorecard, but we need to be able to report back to the council from an economic development perspective what success looks like and how we're measuring our success from an economic development perspective. Right now, we have PBS Aerospace, 150 jobs projected, but what does that really mean from an economics perspective to the city of Roswell? If those jobs are working here, they're eating here at lunchtime, hopefully they're living here in our community, what's the economic development benefit of those jobs here? And we need to be able to tell that story. So we'll be working on that in our scorecard. I also want to talk about the Public Safety Center, the purchase price of $11 million from the original, or off of the original listing price, meaning that we saved $11 million in that deal negotiation as a direct result of the work of our legal team, of Sears' involvement in that project. That is what we want to score on our economic development side. And as we think about Hill Street, what is about $100+ million capital investment mean to the city of Roswell? As we talk about our financial investment at the analysis that we're doing, we want to be able to represent that in numbers, but also jobs created in a scorecard fashion. So we have a quick, clean, and easy way for the community and for the council to understand what results are we getting from our economic development efforts and investments. I know I talk fast, getting through some of these slides, but part of that is just my excitement associated with the work that we're doing. And so, of course, we can go back and talk a little bit about what we've been doing, and you can pepper me with questions as we go.
Thank you, Mr. Leatherman. Mayor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. You started in Parks and Rec, didn't you?
We did. Yeah.
Well done. Jeff, extremely well presented. And appreciate your leadership on the economic team. I'll make some additional comments. I know the council wants to make some comments, but just want to say, really well done, Jeff.
All right. Yes, Councilmember Beeson.
Going back to the scope of work number 7, to clarify, everything's a blur. That one never previously came to mayor and council because that one's under $100,000, correct?
That's correct.
So could you clarify what the scope of work is for that statement of work? Like what's the work product and what's the definition of success or completion for that?
Yeah, we've got 2 parts of that, and thank you for asking. The first is an analysis of our communications team as the city has continued to evolve and reorient ourselves around economic development strategy. Communication is vital to the success of how we're communicating to the city and to the residents of our community to ensure that they're getting the information. And so we're taking a hard look through our economic development team and through the SEER contract and understanding, do we have the right tools in place? Do we have the right model of staffing in place? Do we need to provide more resources into our communications team to deliver on the expectations that we have around our economic development strategy and communicating that outwardly, not only to the community, but you also have to think we are selling the city of Roswell. So we have to sell that from a communications perspective. We have to sell that from a brand perspective, that we are changing, I would say, the way that we have done business for the better part of 20 and even 30 years. So first part is an analysis of the team and deliverables on recommendations from SEER on what they would add or potentially take away from the team, meaning things that they don't need to be doing anymore, that we transfer to other departments that are better suited for that. And right behind that, we will be working on how do we communicate a consistent message across all of our platforms under a united front behind the city of Roswell that is coupled not only with our vision and mission, but also within our brand strategy that we have moving forward. And so those 2 things will be coming together as part of the deliverables with that project. We're on about a 5-month working plan within SEER in that, so we'll see that in quarter 2 start to wind down.
Got it, so 5 months. And then another question, could you go back to the flow chart for the work process of the economic development projects?
Yeah.
This one. Is this published anywhere or publicly accessible? So if somebody is wanting to enter into seeking out if they're able to develop a project with the city of Roswell, is it clear from an outsider's perspective, who do I need to speak to? Who do I need to approach? What are the specific steps that we're going to go through? What do I need to have prepared? Do I need a business plan? Is this publicly accessible?
So the presentation will be absolutely publicly accessible. The intake and the funnel, we were actually talking about that earlier today, of how do we create the right structure administratively to bring projects into the city and have them evaluated. And projects, in some cases, you think about Hill Street, over $100 million. That's different than the mom and pop business that's looking to redevelop in our community or to stay in our community and potentially grow their business. And so we don't have I would say, the right strategy yet just to say, okay, this is the place that you call. We will be talking about our resident and business services, and they will be able to kind of funnel those phone calls into our economic development team. Right now, we feel like they come through about 3 different areas. They're coming through our economic development team, they're coming through community development, and they're also coming in through Roswell, Inc. We funnel that through our Thursday meetings, and that's the strategy right now. And so I would say that, if we have businesses, we have developers that are looking to work with the city, myself is the best point of contact within the city. Also, our economic development director, Daryl Conley, is the best point of contact. And then we will funnel them through this process after we hear the vision, what they're trying to accomplish, and how that aligns with the vision of the city of Roswell. Because that alignment is super important as well, we want to make sure that we're looking at the right types of projects that fit with our existing zoning code, but also fit within our economic development structure and strategy, especially if we're going to invest tools that we have available to us and the city.
I would just give, as my last point of feedback on that, making sure that we're clearly communicating outwardly to the public what that process is and who the point of contact is, to make sure that it is clear and that it's fairly consistent. And then I also want to make sure too, because you did say to make sure that those projects comply with existing zoning. So in other words, they're not asking for variances, they're not asking for changes. It would be by right building. Making sure that this assessment process isn't overly prohibitive, because then I think you start to skirt some, I'm not an attorney, but some Fifth Amendment regulatory takings issues. So I want to make sure that still remains a fair and open process too. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to reiterate on that, as we think about economic development, that goes hand in hand with our community development, our zoning process, and understanding that that's also I think a very purposeful conversation with the community. There are some things that people can do on their property by right. In some cases, that's a do-nothing option. And it's very hard as we think about the willing landowner concept. In some cases, we have to work with landowners to transition them from an unwilling landowner and participant into a willing landowner and participant. Some landowners aren't excited about moving from their existing structure or even potentially just a vacant lot into an economic development process. And so 100% agree that the rights and the zoning process that we have also is running side by side with our economic development strategy and process.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Johnson.
Takes a special human being to operate this mic. Can you go back to the map of the city?
Sorry, I went the wrong way.
That's story of my life.
Favorite map. There we go.
Every time I see this map, I'm going to make the same comment about it because I think it just needs to be hammered into our heads and into, I don't want to hammer anything into the residents' heads, but educate it to the residents. Everything in blue is essentially residential.
Single family.
Single family
Yeah,
residential.
kind of light blue, dark blue, all the blue colors are residential in some
So
nature.
we are not looking to economic develop anything in that area.
That is not part of our strategy.
Correct. So that little slivers of land on the major highways are the only areas that we're looking to redevelop.
That's correct.
And if we don't maximize those potential areas, we're essentially increasing taxes on the people that live in the blue.
Yes. Yeah, and I'll point out one other thing on this map that I think is just important. There was an intentional decision that Roswell, right in the center where it says east side there, we only have one exit in the city of Roswell on Holcomb Bridge Road. And as somebody who lives in the community, that road can be difficult to drive on. We know that 400 and the expansion is coming through. And I know I'm speaking to the choir in some cases, but that constraint needs to be recognized as part of our economic development strategy. That's why we're building and investing in Big Creek, so that we promote better east-west connectivity. It's also why we established the TAD to promote investment from the east side to the west side and connecting our community together. And transformational projects in the center of our city are vital to the success that we have moving forward. We also recognize that the 400 project is coming through GDOT. that is going to promote more through traffic on 400 going northbound. That also makes it a lot faster to drive past our one exit if we don't give people a reason to stop and be here and be a part of our community and spend money. If we talk about destination-oriented economic development, we want people getting off the freeway. We want people getting into our community to experience the economic development strategy that we're creating here in the city of Roswell. And that is part of our strategy. It's part of our Big Creek strategy. It's part of our support that we have with GDOT and working with them to ensure that the community moves forward in a successful way, and that we're doing that in concert with our partnership. As I showed on the slide earlier, it takes the state, it takes the city of Roswell, our partners at Fulton County, and others to make that happen, and that is vital as we move forward on our economic development strategy. So I can talk about it for a while.
Councilmember Johnson, and then
All
Councilmember
right,
Hills.
just one more follow-up. To go back to our conversation we had earlier today, I think the last time we got one of these reports, Councilwoman Beeson did a good job pointing out that we had spent like 65% of the money, but we were only, 50% through the timeline. And you did a good job on the phone today explaining that, but kind of how that works and why that's not you're not saying your concerns are valid, but how it shows that throughout the year, we're now, spent 75% of the money and we're done with the contract.
So the way functionally that we have to encumber the money as it relates to a scope of work is we have to essentially represent the full cost of a scope of work up front when we enter into the contract. And so you see the original scope of work. In some cases, we'll have a change in scope of work. And then you have the revised scope of work column at 1.5 million. Well, out of that 1.5 million, you can see all the way back, we use scope of work number 1 as an example. That scope started in 2024, started a year ago. And we have slowly worked our way through that scope of work based on the deliverables that are required in order to expend the money that was allocated originally. So you essentially allocate the money and recognize it up front, and then you spend that over time. In some cases, you can spend it over the time of a couple of months. For a relatively short scope of work, you look at the USL site utilization plan. That was probably about 60 days worth of work. Closed it out pretty quickly because we got the deliverable that we needed. In some cases, that could extend over the course of 12, 16, even 18 months. There's no magic number in which those scopes either would expire other than what are the deliverables that we expect and how fast or how hard or how many hours are we working. And so, as you see, communication scope as it relates to this, we entered into that scope of work in February and really just started to receive the bills here in April for the first month. And we'll be working our way through that.
Councilmember Hills.
You set that up well for me, Councilmember Johnson. This was the page I wanted to ask you about, and I appreciate the way you described that, Jeff. Something that I've come to recognize in a little over 3 years is the vast talent sitting at this table right now, backed up by all the city staff and talent that we've hired or have kept, what is that called, retained. But there's been a lot of conversation in the trenches, out in social media, at our bus stops or wherever we are about what in the world this is, who is SEER. We're spending money like crazy. Nobody's explaining where it's coming from. The city doesn't know what they're doing. And it takes time and it takes a lot of risk from this party, from this body, to be able to put ourselves out there. Even with each person at this table, just elected people's talent base, it's pretty vast. Honestly, I don't know when I've seen, because I've known in the 23 years I've lived here, pretty much everybody, but maybe 2 council members that have served as an elected person here. And I'm the catering person, special events. But I do bring things to the table. And I haven't seen this sort of depth or breadth. And to be able to put ourselves out there on the line for what you just said, Councilmember Johnson, and I think we're all believing, you've got to invest with a little bit of risk. And in this case, it's huge. And none of us could have, for $2 million, pulled this off so far. And we're still waiting on the edge of our seats for some of these things to come to fruition. But it's really important, I think. I love that this is going to be available for anybody and everybody to look at on the website. I know that folks can call in and ask for delineation on those things. Something I wanted to ask about, we've got close to $500,000 at the bottom remaining, and then this thing will renew the contract with a new. So does that roll into that? And
Yeah.
how does that work?
Great question. So what will happen is these active scopes will continue as they're currently encumbered. And then we will have a new limit of authorized amount of $2 million that will reset when the contract resets.
Okay.
But, we don't start any expenditures until we enter into a scope of work. So we may not need any of that capacity right away. I will tell you that we know that there are some new projects that are coming forward as it relates to economic development that we are crafting scopes for right now. And so as it relates to Q2 when we report back, please know that there will be additional scopes that we will have entered into for projects that we are currently, that are moving out of that kind of very early preliminary due diligence phase and into the origination phase. That is happening right now. And we will have those defined and delineated in our next presentation as it relates to economic development. But that will start to essentially utilize a new authorized contract amount of $2 million. It does not become $2.4 million, but we do use our existing authorized contract amount of 1.5. That'll essentially freeze in time, and then we will have a new limit of $2 million that we move into and start to use in the next contract cycle. We will be bringing forward some additional recommendations as we move into our contract or our calendar year budget. We also need to do some work in cleaning up contracts to make sure that the contracts are cycling on the calendar year budget as well. And so we'll be looking at administratively across the organization on how do we start to orient the entire city operation around the calendar year budget and also our quarterly reporting, which is why we're doing it this way now.
Just one quick thing I want to finish with, and I'll turn it over. Thank you for that explanation. Something else that I know I have, maybe each person at this table has had the conversation of, well, how in the world are you paying $2 million for one guy? Well, if we look at just Senior Vice President Leatherman here, he's not doing what he does all by himself. He's got support staff that round up things and accomplish things and report up to him. And Mr. Sorkoff has the same access to professionals in different talent bases that we don't have access to. Some we know and we've drawn in and been able to negotiate relationships. But as far as somebody executing that in a very meaningful, very high level and very sophisticated manner, no one at this table has by themselves. So it's not just Mr. Sorkoff getting paid $2 million. It comes with a host of talent and support staff in certain banks of expertise. So I just wanted to put that out there because I've had to explain that to neighbors and to friends, and they're like, well, where do I go look that up? I'm like, it's coming, and that's why these scopes of work are coming regularly so that they can be tracked on a dollar level and accomplishment level. So thank you.
Councilmember Sells, and then
Thank you, Chairman. Jeff, if I recall, and I should know this, but statement number one, didn't that begin as a part of Daryl's thing, and we wound all that stuff together in statement number one?
Yeah.
We were basically closing out an existing piece of work that was under a contract of some sort.
Right.
And then we rolled that all into that statement of work, and I think that's what the 330 statement of work change is basically putting all of the new business, as it were, the new economic development in 2024 under that original statement of work that Daryl was monitoring and working with.
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
that's
thought
right.
so.
And then I'll also just mention that there were some elements, I'll use Hill Street as an example. Before we had the scope of work number 5, there was some work for Hill Street happening in scope of work number 1. And as we want to have the accountability in the reporting process, that's where we started to break out in more detail the individual scopes so that we could have tracking, we could have monitoring, but also we have the ability to turn something off and turn something on. Economic development projects, as you saw, all of the pieces that are required to cause something to move forward, there are occasions where we'll start the due diligence on a project and decide this isn't something worth continuing to pursue. We just need to turn that off. And that's by breaking these scopes out, it gives us that flexibility to do so. So,
Mr.
sorry,
Shakespeare, you stole my thunder.
Sorry.
I was going to go there, but
Yeah.
I do want to point that out. This is the way we are managing our relationships, not just with SEER. So whereas that first one was sort of an ombudsman catch-up, stuff was going on, we're trying to be far more precise in what we are asking for in a statement of work, the timeline that surrounds that statement of work, and what the deliverables are. And so we're taking these, and that's why you see, obviously they fell off a cliff in terms of size as you went down the way. This is true for our DDA relationship, right? So in economic development, we're trying to keep people focused on a project as a body of thought and making sure that we deliver all that all the way through. So I just want, that's, to me, that's what this sheet specifically highlights, so.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I do have some others if nobody else has any other questions for him.
Okay. Councilmember Beeson?
Just wanted to clarify, based off Councilmember Johnson's feedback. So my feedback the last time that we had this back in October, it wasn't that I did not understand the concept of a scaffolded invoice or time and expense or how does this process work? Very much work in a consulting industry where this is standard practice. My concern previously was, and we don't have that as a supporting document this time like we had last time, but statement of work number 1 had about 24 different line items of, it became a catch-all. And my concern was scope creep because originally it was for land planning and acquisition. That statement of work predated the master services agreement, and it was originally just around real estate consulting. And then it became economic development strategy. And then it became land planning. And then it became this catch-all. And as we were adding on to the change in the statement of work of about $330,000, which was significantly more than the original SOW, which was $275,000, my concern was going through that 24 line item list of this is what the scope of work is. We couldn't even check a box on any of those items of things that we had previously completed. And now we were adding more items to the list to a higher dollar value of $330,000 without the ability to say, we've completed this and now we're expanding the scope. So it's not that I don't understand why we're at roughly 75% of the contract, of total contracts, and we have about 25% left as we're heading into Q2. We'll do the Q2 update. It was more so I was concerned about the lack of accountability on statement of work number 1. And I think Councilmember Sell spoke to that in that we're getting at least a little more detailed in the additional statements of work that we're adding. It's just that SOW number 1 that I want to be mindful of, that we're still reporting back on those deliverables and making sure that they're executable items.
Yep, understood.
Councilmember Sells.
Damn me with faint praise, will you? So I'm not willing to go and say that we lost complete sight of statement of work number 1. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that it was overbroad. It was a contract. It was the classic way that the city had done the stuff that it did. And there was, I have to go back and look at it, but we knew exactly what we were talking about. And there's one particular transaction that was a part of that as well, in terms of land planning, which we're going to be able to talk about out loud soon. So it wasn't that we lost sight. It was that it was not detailed enough and not able to be described. So I think we're doing the exact right thing. I don't accept that we didn't do statement of work correctly, or it really predates me. It was on the field when we got here, and Daryl was managing it correctly. I don't think that he lost sight of that, but we did need to break it into pieces so that we could put all the other organs because this is a whole of government approach to economic development. That's what we're doing here.
Yeah, and I think too, the challenge within economic development, and I'll just switch to this side, kind of that economic development strategy component is, we also, I think, just have to I know that we recognize, but I'm going to say it out loud, is that the SEER contract, and I think as Councilmember Hills had mentioned, is an extension of not just one individual, but there are multiple employees under the SEER World LLC banner that are working on behalf of the city on various projects, including sub-consultants and others in the bench behind that. And it is really building a department, which is not uncommon, through a contract relations services. You see that in a lot of cities around the community. You see it at Sandy Springs previously. You see it at Johns Creek, where cities will bring the private sector in to run either a department or potentially a whole city or a component of a department. We, the city of Roswell, have done that a couple of times before. And the SEER contract is really an extension of our economic development department and provides the depth that we need in order to move project forward. And that's where the economic development strategy, I think Councilmember Sells, is defining what does that really mean. That means that we are in weekly meetings together. We are in strategy meetings together. We are developing relationships with landowners. And then that spins off to more defined scopes of work that really become project basis on the left-hand side of the screen. And you will continue to see that detail from Q1 to Q2 in 2025 as the details begin to grow and the project lists begin to grow in more definitive terms.
Well, the city is building the skill set along with that. So SEER was taking, very much the front and center. And you've now added a couple of key people.
That's right.
To augment that. We're doing our own modeling, for instance, as opposed to having to outsource that. So we're getting control of our process, and we talked a lot about that today. So that's why this is also getting more tight.
That's right.
We're using the specialists where we need the specialists, whereas in the first days of this effort, he was much more generalist than he is today.
That's correct.
Yeah. Councilmember Morthland.
I think just a little bit different approach on this, and that is your whole presentation. This is a fantastic presentation. This is highly digestible. This is easy to understand. Anybody can go out there and follow your thought process here. The thing I'm most excited about is the economic development process slide that you showed. That is the blueprint for our economic development future. This is going to give Roswell the pathway forward to good development, what we are expecting, what we want, where we are skillfully going to talk about the end result. This is the blueprint, and this is your brainchild. So thank you for that.
This is development out of the team. You think about the work that we've been created, and as Councilmember Sells has said, there is a bench behind both Daryl and myself that is helping to define what this means to the city of Roswell. And so I won't take credit for this. This is an iteration over the last 18 months of how do we take essentially a city that did not have an economic development strategy, build it quickly so that while recognizing that the faster we move, the more opportunities we have to rescue our city from an economic development perspective. When you look at our corridors that need that, you look at the connection of the east side of our community to the west side of the community, both kind of physically and I would say emotionally from an economic and community perspective, all of that is wrapped in together, and that is where the strategy comes from. So there is a large bench behind me with Daryl and with others that are developing this strategy. And I will make promises that this will probably change and iterate over time, that we will get better and better as we go from week to week and month to month, that when you see this a year from now, the columns on the left-hand side will probably be more refined and more detailed in how we're evaluating and vetting projects. In fact, it better be, frankly, because we're getting better as we go.
Councilmember Hall and then Johnson.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on what Jeff said because I think it's very, very important for the public to know. Basically, for the last 2 years, we have been meeting as an economic development team behind, basically with the consultant SEER, with numerous other experts, with city staff, with department leaders, making from nothing that existed an economic development strategy under the direction from Mayor Wilson to you need to make an economic development strategy for the next 50 years.
That's right.
I mean, so basically that is no small feat. This is something that has to be sustainable and something where we have to recognize what our limitations are. For example, the one exit off of 400. For example, the infrastructure. How is infrastructure going to support the developments? It was a very tedious and at times tedious process and lengthy process, but it's incredible what this team, what your team under with the guidance of SEER and support of, as you say, behind your bench has accomplished. I mean, it's really, it's tremendous. I mean, it's exciting that we're there and we're not done. I mean, there's a lot more to do, but how far we've come, it's incredible. Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
Jeff, I want to go back to something you said and reiterate it. Other cities use, contracted employees. Like how high of a level? Director level,
Yeah.
C-suite level, I guess would you
Sure.
call it? Would
Yeah, I
call
mean,
that?
you can see different models throughout, really East Coast to West Coast. I saw it when I was working on the West Coast with new startup cities and with legacy cities. The movement of contractors in and out of an organization is fairly common. Sandy Springs is the best, kind of closest example, as they stood up their city operations. Really, everybody except for police, fire, and the city administrator were contract employees for quite some time, meaning that they had a large-scale operational contract to support department directors all the way down to line staff. So you see that in different areas and different models in and around, well, Georgia and other communities. Gives you, there's a variety of reasons of why you would do it. The city of Roswell had a contract relationship in our community development project as late as 2022, 2023. We were spending about $1.5 million under contract to operate a portion of our community development department. We decided to move away from that just for very strategic reasons, but we had that contract in place. We spent about $1.5 million as of the last time that we had them for an annual basis. So it's not uncommon even for the city of Roswell to be in that kind of relationship.
All right. Thank you. Yes, Councilmember
I'm sorry, I'm
Sells.
going to keep pounding go back to the map if you don't mind. I want to drive another nail here.
Make sure I go the right way this time.
Yeah. So looking at that map, to the west of Alpharetta Highway, yeah, everything to the west, all that pink, that's
It's your Parkway Village.
yeah, but it's economic, right? So when we say I've heard we talk about, and you said it, that something like 15% of the geography is residential, or excuse me, is commercial, is
about 18%,
available, right?
yeah.
And that gold basically hovered around the east side of Alpharetta Highway and all the way. I would imagine when you start talking about the average age of the economic development, that's probably on the older end of the spectrum. Everything all the way down to quite frankly, till you leave Roswell on the other side.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And it looks like, just eyeballing, but I would say that's got to be 75% of the zone is east of of Alpharetta Highway.
That's correct. Yep.
So, you talked about a couple of things in terms of our process. I call it a rifle shot. I can't remember the word you used, but basically we have to have the right opportunity and, as you say, the right willing buyer, because all of that land is owned by somebody and it's not the city of Roswell.
Yep.
And so we have to be able to encourage or those that are in the right spot that we need, if it's something that's undeveloped or it's a gray field, right? So we have to do that there. Or we have to find them a new spot or something like that. So there's a lot, we have to have capital and liquidity on our side, which is what Bill's been working on.
Yep.
We have to have the process, which you and the team have been working on, the process to move through that. But we also have to have the opportunities. And I think that if you prioritize the opportunities based on their impact on our residents, both as a tax matter and also on their quality of life, the ones that walk through the ComDev door they're important to those people, no doubt, and they may be important, but they're not the ones that are going to move the city. So that opportunity piece is something that we have to go out and get. And that's what, Roswell Inc. and Sear and Darrell, that's what they're focused on, is going out and finding transformative projects and doing those rifle shots and matching opportunity, our contribution, and the land that it takes to get that done.
Yeah, I think it's so important as we talk about economic development, and I want to make sure that I'm clear. We have great businesses in our corridors. We have great businesses in the city of Roswell, and we want to make sure that our economic development strategy is supportive of those businesses, that is causing business to thrive in our community. But as we think about what is going to, when we have willing businesses and willing landowners that want to redevelop, how do we put them into the right system that gives them the maximum use under our strategy? And so I want to make sure that we are continuing to celebrate the great businesses that we have in our community. It's when do the opportunities show up? And when you're talking about $100 million or $1 billion investment in the city of Roswell, as you said, those aren't coming through the community development structure. They're coming through a strategy where they recognize that there is a willing city that has an economic development strategy, and my investment dollars have the potential to be successful. Let's be honest, the people that are in the development game are looking at a city to ensure that they can minimize their risk and maximize their opportunity for growth of their dollar, of their investment, of their strategy. We have to find and marry all of that together to make sure that the desires of the development community also match the desires of what we want from our community, and what we want for our community. And as I think Councilmember Hall said, it's not just tomorrow and 5 years, it's 50 years down the road. And that takes time and effort and strategy. It is not just baked overnight.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Any other further comments regarding item number 5, the Economic Development Performance Report? Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff, just to reiterate, job well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. And by the way, it's incredibly gratifying to hear and the people don't get to hear it. They don't get to hear the engagement of their elected body, their council, that they're incredibly well represented by all 6 just amazing residents, and the engagement of the city government, the leadership team, how much work's being done, and the incorporation of outside vendors, and specifically SEER, which is really kind of the tip of the spear of the economic strategy. So it's just gratifying to hear everybody in 3.5 years, 3 years and 4 months, how integrated everyone has got into understanding and working on long-term economic strategy. And it's very gratifying to hear it. And very difficult. There's a lot of pieces to it, but you brought up some of them, but there's even more. But thank you for your hard work.
Absolutely.
Sir?
All right, thank you. Excellent presentation and discussion. Thank you, Mr. Leatherman, and
Thank you.
obviously Mayor and Council for your leadership in this space of economic development, which the city of Roswell is establishing itself as a preeminent player in the state of Georgia and indeed the nation. Thank you, sir. Item number 6.
You want to vote? Okay.
Item number 6, consideration of an ordinance to amend Chapter 22 Traffic and Motor Vehicles, Article 3, Parking Restrictions of the Code and Ordinances of the City of Roswell. Mr. Leatherman will also present this item.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I promise this will be, well, can't promise that, but my side of it will be shorter. How about that? Parking is an economic development strategy, and we've gone through these slides, and so I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but I think it's really important that I want to make sure as we talk about parking over time that we are consistent with our messaging. We are talking about parking as an economic development strategy, but right now we are focused just on the existing areas that we have for parking in our downtown corridor, Kansas Street, Elizabeth Way, East Alley. We have added Old Mill parking lot to that strategy as we start to work through how we best serve the residents in our community with one of our park locations. We've talked a lot about the pressures that we will see from an economic development perspective. Those are good pressures. We just got done talking about our economic development strategy, Hill Street, West Alley, Chambray Hotel, all things that are coming in the near future that will put more pressure, good pressure on our downtown corridor. We have to recognize that parking and parking as a service will be a component of those projects moving forward. But right now we are focused on just changing our resolutions and our authority to do the right type of enforcement and charging for the existing parking spaces, including Old Mill Park, moving forward that we've already been doing since 2019. So this is just a resolution and ordinance cleanup. Again, these were our recommendations from the last time that we talked about that. The final one is moving through the ordinance change. Want to just highlight a couple of items. Most of it is just changing the language in the ordinance. Our legal team has done a great job helping to support us. We are amending the ordinance to allow the council to establish and designate areas for paid city parking both on-street and off-street to deal with some of our parking lots, establishing a maximum citation amount of $20 for failure to pay for parking. We're also working our way through the fees. We want to repeal resolution from 2019, establish new weekday and weekend parking fee structure underneath the authority of the city administrator. That's important. That authority will be a maximum of $5 per hour. It will escalate $4 annually, or 4% annually, excuse me. And the reason that we're going to this structure is we know that we are going to be working our way through a dynamic pricing model for parking moving forward. That means when we see lower demand, we're going to be able to lower our prices. When we're going to see increasing demand, we're going to be able to increase our pricing. But we also want to establish and recognize that we want a limit and a ceiling to that pricing at this point in time. We do recognize that costs will increase over time. That's where we have our inflator. But this gives the authority to establish the pricing model under the city administrator or his designee moving forward into the future. Again, only in areas that we designate right now by resolution and ordinance. You will be designating Canton Street, Elizabeth Way, and East Alley, the existing parking locations. We're adding the Old Mill parking lots associated with that park facility to give us the ability to start to look at management around Old Mill and how we manage Old Mill parking for the future. We are still working our way through the technology component. We've talked about different policy-related decisions of how we could limit parking, primarily to a resident-only parking structure. We still have to work our way through the technology of how do we implement that type of technology. We know it exists. What does it look like for the city to implement a resident-only parking structure so that you all can consider that both at Old Mill, but also for the future as we work our way through other parking strategies for the city of Roswell as part of our economic development strategy. That's what we have in the resolutions contained in your packet. We are recommending moving those forward to first and second reading at your next council meetings. We can answer any questions that you may have. That is a summary. We've talked a lot about parking over the last couple of committee items, and so I won't belabor the point. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Leatherman. Questions or comments regarding this item? Yes, Councilmember Hills.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. Senior Vice President Leatherman, sorry, too many titles. I know we aren't discussing the Mill Village parking per se tonight in this ordinance, this ordinance, but just to reassure our residents, I think we are all aware that the Old Mill Park parking lot itself, by itself, will have serious ramifications on the commercial area right north of it or uphill.
That's right.
And then, of course, the Mill Village. So without going into great detail, because I understand it's not baked all the way, could you speak just a minute to some options that we're looking at for the Mill Village or around that whole concern?
Yeah, and as we kind of work through those options, I will just note that we have some flexibility between first and second reading to amend locations of where we want to have parking restrictions and the right language to be able to do this. But really what we're looking through is there a way to establish resident-only type parking? Some of the challenges become resident only, but then how do you deal with visitors? How do you deal with birthday parties? How do you deal with other people that are coming to the community, and how do you support them so that they are not issued a citation for legitimate reasons of being and visiting in a neighborhood? And so we want to work our way through the technology of essentially how do we establish the residency component of where can a vehicle be and be parked legally if we have restrictions to resident-only parking? And how do we do that in a comprehensive way, not only just for one portion of our community, but also throughout the city if we want to implement those types of strategies? And so we are meeting with parking vendors really this week. And we'll just shout out to our IT department and our director there. Damien has been doing a great job of helping to support us and understanding the technology that's available, and then getting into the implementation side. Again, as I said, license plate reader concept and other components of parking have been deployed throughout communities and college campuses around the United States and other places. Really, it's understanding the back office side of how do you support administratively that kind of solution and deploy it out into a community in a comprehensive way that doesn't create more problems than it solves. And that's what we're working our way through right now. So we did not include them currently in the ordinance, but it can be amended as we work our way through those policy conversations and the logistical conversations moving forward.
Thank you. Councilmember Beeson.
I might be alone on this one and make myself wildly unpopular, but just for the sake of conversation, the maximum citation is $20 for failure to pay to park. Hypothetically speaking, say I worked on Canton Street, I take a primo parking spot on Elizabeth Way for my 8-hour shift. I could pay $40 to park for my 8-hour shift, or I could get 50% off and just pay the $20 citation. So is there a reason why we're not entertaining a higher cost of citation? I park at UGA. I, one time, parked in a spot I was not supposed to be parking in, and I paid $50. And that's at a public university, for college students. I would say $50 would at least be reasonable, and that would cover 10 hours of parking, or the assumption that someone's taking that space for the full business day. I would just proffer to the rest of mayor and council if they'd be amenable to increasing the citation for failure to park to $50 instead of $20. Also, I think it would support the cost of monitoring those parking spaces as a result.
Mayor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I won't let you be the bad guy on this.
Okay.
I'll be the bad guy, because I know the entire council feels differently than I do. So $20. No, I think, Sarah, I think David agrees with you. I think Christine agrees with you. I think Alan agrees with you. I know Lee agrees with you. Will's the only person I don't know. So you are 100% on the right side of this issue right now. Let me offer you up something. So the reason we threw $20 up there as potential policy, several reasons. I'll call it the Michelle Leatherman factor. Sorry.
You're gonna get me in trouble. You're gonna get me in serious trouble.
All right, I'll call it the, go ahead. All right. Let's use, we have already gotten significant feedback on a development in downtown Roswell that is charging $80 for parking tickets, right? And some of this is anecdotal, okay? I will share with you. This is. There you go. And so what we believe is the response is, as we're establishing a parking policy and parking service, is that we do not want to create the environment of having people so virulent in their reaction to the fine that they say, screw Roswell, I'm not coming back to Roswell. That's part of the strategy. The other strategy is, I will use a personal example of myself and Senior Vice President and Police Chief Jim Conroy. Police Chief Jim Conroy, violator of the law in Athens, Georgia. Kurt Wilson, Mayor of Georgia, violator of the law in Athens, Georgia. We both parked, and I paid the silly meter, right, twice. Of course, it's a racket down there. So they're really trying to catch you, right? And so I went over 7 minutes. After the second, I paid twice, didn't get there 7 minutes. Boom, got my $20 fine. Okay, not happy, but it's a $20 fine. Technically, I'm in service. Conroy, Police Chief Jim Conroy, our Senior Vice President, same theory you just used, Sarah. Going for a college football game on a Saturday.
It's cheaper to take the citation.
That's what he thought. Yeah. But Athens is smarter than that, because they have understood that the behavior of, hey, if I'm just simply calculating cost, then why wouldn't I just take my $20 fine? And Athens understood that issue. And you know how many tickets Jim Conroy got? Same place, boom, boom, every hour, boom.
Each hour.
Exactly. So there is a way to manage this to the heart of your question. What I'm going to offer up to you is the reason we threw $20 out there is we didn't want to be too punitive, number one. The second part is we wanted it to be applicable across the city's parking policy. So when we're thinking about downtown, we're also thinking about Old Mill. We're thinking, hey, this has to be applicable. The third part was we didn't want it to be so punitive that people would have an adverse negative response towards the city and say, screw Roswell. And the fourth part of it was we said we can be adaptable like Athens and create, because we're going to create the infrastructure and the technology to say, you know what, if you're gaming the system, we got an answer for you. So if you're an employee and you say, you know what, I can do that, then we have the response for like Jim Conroy, right? Boom, boom, boom. In other words, you can't game the system. It's a great question. So all of you are absolutely in opposition to me on this one. I don't know if I've had any impact in influencing your thinking differently. you can change this between the first now and the first reading, and you can change it now and the second reading. I would suggest, without maybe us having a tremendous amount of debate tonight, that we have some more conversations, but $20 for me, for Jeff, was the easy response, non-punitive, and you can manage it to keep people from gaming the system. Because I didn't want people, like I've seen happen to a development here, where people said, I'm not going back there anymore. I got an $80 ticket, and I'm not going back anymore. I don't want that to happen to Roswell. And that was just our kind of thought about it. And I said it's anecdotal, just personal experience. And the second part of it was $20 is a signal, and if somebody's gaming you, you can create the opportunities to solve for that. And the third part is we wanted it to be across the board. So we were thinking about Old Mill as well when we thought about this. So that's my 2 cents.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Morthland.
Are you joining me or are you leaving me?
Same question I asked on our conversation. What is the rate for the private lots in Canton Street area?
So ranges from, essentially it's a flat rate right now, either $5 or $10 for the flat rate. And our average stay that we're seeing right now is usually about 2 hours. So you're anywhere from $2.50 to $5 per hour if you're staying in that 2-hour marker. So we're essentially setting our rate comparable to what we're seeing right now. Again, that's the ceiling. I don't anticipate us being up in the ceiling. We'll work through kind of our dynamic pricing model as we move forward on what's appropriate based on what the market is telling us.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Hills.
Okay, got it. What we're proposing right now, I know we're just in committee, but that doesn't have the opportunity, if you're there double the time, to add on, correct? At this
Yeah,
point?
I think we'd probably, I'm looking over at Joe and with David, we'd probably need to tweak the language a little bit if we wanted to have that escalation path. Right now, our escalation path is, if you're egregious, we have the opportunity for towing and booting and those kinds of things, which, is really the last resort of really dealing with a vehicle that is abusing the system that we have set up. But we would need to amend the language at first reading, and we can do that when we bring it forward if we want to include that. To the mayor's point, we can have those conversations over the next couple of weeks and figure that out.
And then if we go through this and end up with this exact wording, and come September, we decide that's not working, this is still committee and 2 readings to adjust that again, correct?
That's correct. And so if we want to amend the ordinance and create additional latitude for an increased fine amount or, something isn't working, we would need to bring that back because the fine amount is contained within the ordinances. That's why we've essentially given the flexibility on the rate amount to the city administrator, but we have bound the fine amount to the ordinance and limited that to the council authority.
Okay, and then rolling back to Old Mill Park parking lot and the Mill Village. Can you just walk through again the timeline here and what we're trying to accomplish, knowing that this is high tide season? That I'm going to say precious neighborhood, but our historic neighborhood there is under duress right now, and it's ramping up. So just to give our residents some sort of idea of what timeline, and I know we haven't gotten exact delineation on the license plate reader and how that's going to work, but
That's right. Yeah, and the challenge is we don't know how fast we can implement once we make a decision on technology and the use of technology. So that's part of our conversations with service providers. We're meeting with one again tomorrow to look at both. Okay, what does the timeline look like? If we said go today, how fast can we get up and running? In an ideal world, we're looking 30 to 60 days. That's the Jeff Leatherman kind of, man, if I could really turn this sucker on, then that's what we would do and try to really escalate. It would take a lot of effort to get that done from an administrative process, but that's kind of my perfect world. We got to see if the technology can match us in that aggressive nature. We have to think about, okay, it's not just license plate readers, but what do you attach them to? Are you attaching them to an existing vehicle? Do we put them on a golf cart? How do we just manage our way through the actual reading? Yeah, we can go out and kind of do it by hand, and walk the street, so to speak. It's not necessarily the most efficient use. So just functionally, how do we deploy that? But in the Jeff Leatherman world, we're moving 30 to 60 days of trying to get the right solution, working with the council, working with the community, because we have, there's an onboarding process that we've got to tackle there too. And as you described, I just will continue to say, we also have staff member support from with our recreation and park staff and helping to manage on the weekends and setting expectations of what's allowed and disallowed. We have our communications team ramping up and making sure that we're communicating internally and externally to people that want to visit Roswell, what's allowed and disallowed there at the park. And then, of course, support from our law enforcement officers as necessary to really curb behavior that is egregious.
And it sounds like, Mr. Knighton, you're also working with our police department to get a solid plan in place on that so that we can manage into a solution.
That's correct, yes, and also with Chief Operating Officer Don Stevens as
Yes.
well. And so we've obviously had conversations with our both police and parks and have deployed a strategy here in the interim that we hope will address certain issues for people to enjoy what is a wonderful park, but also to comply with the guidelines that the council has implemented over the past year or so. And we'll continue to do that, and we'll continue to monitor and adapt as we need.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Beeson.
Again, just for the sake of conversation, obviously this can change before it comes to council in 2 weeks. Totally agree with you on being overly punitive. I also, like half of Roswell, who has been to this development, got the fun $80 charge. As one of the situations where it's like, I didn't know. I think in this situation, and I know we discussed this at the retreat, would we be able to entertain also in this the concept of like a grace, the first grace violation, or like you get a one oopsie free, and then after that we can be slightly more punitive? But I understand the $20. I think that was kind of the issue with this parking deck in particular, was that a lot of people were like, I didn't know, the signage was extremely limited, I did not see a QR code, I went afterwards and found where you could go to a kiosk, it was very hidden. So there was not anything in there that would condition you to think I needed to pay for parking other than one sign that you passed on the way in. By the time you're on the second or third floor, that's out of your brain. But in this situation, these are areas that we've already been conditioning people to pay for parking. It's not a new section, but it has not been enforced previously. I'm sure there are a number of people who have realized that it has not been enforced and probably don't watch council meetings.
That's right.
Just to give them the benefit of the doubt. I know, it's my favorite show that I love to watch.
I binge watch it.
Just to give those folks the benefit of the doubt of, I didn't realize that this was enforced parking. I've parked here for the last 3 years and I've never paid for parking. Are we able to give them a grace for that first violation?
Yeah, and essentially we won't even be issuing a formal violation in those cases. We'll be issuing warnings. We have a change of behavior, I think, to your point, that we'll need to establish of, something is changing in these corridors. People, whether it be residents or visitors or even employees that have been parking in the same spot for the last 3 years with no penalty. So we'll need to change that behavior. We don't want to do that through a citation model. We want to do that through an education model. We've already started to meet with the downtown business owners, informing them of the change in strategy. We'll continue to have those conversations, and I'm not going to put any hard deadlines of it's going to start citations on this day, but really we want people's behaviors to change. We don't want to issue citations. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to turn those parks.
Say that again, because I think strategically it's really important. You said this, you didn't say this in this presentation, but you've said this before, and I think it's really important. Imparting kind of from a policy and philosophy perspective, what we're really after. And you started to say it there, but you've actually said it a little cleaner and a little broader.
Yeah, the reality is our parking solution is about an economic development strategy to support our local businesses. We want to open up the front door, and in the case of East Alley, in some cases the back door of businesses in our downtown district in particular, but in our future economic development strategy to support local businesses. That is what we're after. And that is why we want to turn parking spaces over. We want people to come and enjoy what we have to offer in our downtown corridor, and then make space available for the next guest that's coming into our community, spending time, spending money, celebrating the great city that Roswell is. That is what we're after.
And you're after, you're not after revenue.
No,
You're after and trying to,
we're after supporting businesses.
that's right.
All right, thank you. Any further comments or questions regarding this item? Seeing none, we'll ask for a motion to move this forward. Motion by Councilmember Hills.
Can I make one comment?
Yes.
And
Comment by Mayor Wilson.
it'll be coming in 13 days, so I know there's a lot to bake. So, and I understand it. And I understand there's five. I can't tell where Will falls. He's very quiet. I know there's five that have a different perspective. There's a lot to talk about.
All right, thank you. No, thank you for interjecting. Motion by Councilmember Hills. We have second by Councilmember Johnson. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor? All right, we'll move this item forward unanimously. Thank you so much. All right, thank you. Under Public Works, item number 7. Consideration to award a contract with Crown Service Contractors for the renovation of the resident and business services areas in an amount not to exceed $1,240,952 with a budget authorization of $1,417,952. This will be handled by both Mr. Leatherman and Mr. Watson. Yes.
That is not true. It is so important. Brian is here to give me a break. Whew, we're going. I just want to, Brian is here not just for moral support as we continue to work on, how do we deliver projects? The CIP team was stood up a couple of years ago now and really started to propel various projects forward. And his team has been a great support getting us to this point. I want to cover really the strategy behind resident and business services. Brian will cover the contractual relationship that we're moving forward. So we have two parts. We have really the strategy first, and then the mechanics of the contract is the last component of this. And then Lori is also in the back, our customer service manager. I just wanted to introduce her. Fantastic addition to our team. She's been here 4 months now, and has just been a great addition to not only the team and standing up the team, but also collecting data and building our dashboards out as we deliver on the vision of one point of contact for our resident and businesses in the city of Roswell. And that really is the simple way to think about what we're trying to accomplish with this investment. And the experience that I think a lot of people have, and you see it if you're in our rotunda every day, is that feeling and the experience of essentially wandering around to try to figure out how to get service from the city of Roswell, whether that be physically in the building or whether it be in our email system or whether it be in our phone system. And we are consolidating that vision into one point of contact for our residents to deliver on customer service, both on the resident side and the business side in the city of Roswell. A component of that is electronic, which we've already started, consolidating all of our phone systems into one area, consolidating our email systems into one area. And the third part of that is going to be consolidating our actual staff into one area into City Hall. We're going to be remodeling a component of the ground floor of City Hall. If you see Hill Street on the very bottom of the map, my big giant red arrow, believe it or not, there's actually an entrance into City Hall underneath the stairs right there. We are leveraging the entrance of that location. We are going to be relocating essentially our resident and business services from throughout the City Hall. We've got about 5 different, what I'll call front counters spread around City Hall. We're going to be consolidating all of that work into one single area in the city so that as residents show up and need service from the city, they have one big red arrow to follow into those front doors, and they will be served by our wonderful team that Lori is leading. We're going to be remodeling the patio space to welcome our guests and visitors into the doors. We'll be redoing some landscape around the corner of that building as part of this project. As you enter into the building, so the entrance is there kind of on your right-hand side, we'll have a greeting counter where we can do quick transactions for our community. So if you need to just come in and pay a utility bill, you can do that right when you walk in the doors. If you need to come in and pay your tax bill, you can do that right when you walk in the doors. So the cashiering services will be there. If you need a little bit more, I will say, complicated help, maybe you're doing a new build or you're working on a permit, you'll be directed down the hall where we'll have our counter staff available to either walk you through a community development process or potentially do a resolution on a billing issue that you may have for our water or for our solid waste team. All will be contained here in this space. So as you enter into the front counter area, on the right-hand side, you'll see we have a couple of small rooms where if you need to have a private meeting with staff or work with our community development team, we have that available right here in one location as part of this remodel. We're also working on our front desk in the rotunda. Shay, an awesome member of our team, is kind of tucked in the very far corner when you come off the elevators, and she tries to wave at people and get people's attention. But if you're first or you've never been in the building before, you kind of enter into the building, you're not sure exactly what to do, where to go. We're going to center Shay and our team right there in the center of the building so that we can welcome people into City Hall, direct them where they maybe need to go, and then redirect them if they need to go downstairs in our customer service center. Shay will also, and whomever's working the front counter, will also be able to do cashiering services and other work there in the middle of that building. But if you can imagine people coming off the elevators behind that or right in through the front doors, kind of wander around a little bit. You got these beautiful staircases and doors all over the place. You're not quite sure where to go. So centering our customer service and our resident and business services team there. And then we have the recommendation to move this forward. So this is kind of the fundamental piece of remodeling the downstairs of City Hall into our new resident and business services center. This also includes a component of our IT department. As we encroach on some of their space, we need to remodel and expand their footprint. And so this contract includes not only resident and business services, but also our IT suite and the remodel around the office space to optimize the work that they're doing on behalf of the city of Roswell. So we're requesting approval of this. Mr. Watson is here on the technical components of our contract. And again, thank you to his team for their ongoing support.
Any comments, Mr. Watson, at the moment? All right. Thank you for your support. Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff, can you pull up the last slide on where the private offices are? One more back. Yes, this one here. And I also want to just reference the one you just showed. So when I'm not clear on your plan, and I know you've been working on this for a year plus, along with the team, where is Councilmember Morthland's office? Is it that first one or the second one?
Just behind the second one.
Or do you go back up? Go back. I was going to say, if you go back to the next slide. All right, no, the first one, the
This one
rotunda. He's supposed to take Shay. Is he going to take Shay's? I'm not sure.
We can take that back corner.
That's
It'll be
what I'm saying.
available.
Okay.
Yeah, so we
I
can
just want to
place
make
him
sure
there if
that's part of the
necessary.
plan. We have
Yep.
Councilmember Morthland's, because he is part of the response for,
We can update
Front
this
lines.
slide as we bring it to council for approval and just put his.
we'll make sure we
name
got that
plaque right
handled.
there.
Thank you.
Councilmember Beeson.
What was originally budgeted for this remodel and the yearly budget?
Go ahead. You want me to tackle it? So we established just over $2 million for the budget originally, and so as we worked with our engineer, that's the budget that they established. So we're well under budget as we look to award this contract. Mr. Watson has also done a great job of working on securing some, I will say, low-cost furniture that will help us mitigate the need to purchase furniture. So we are reserving, what I'll say, some of the remainder of the budget for any improvements that with furniture that we need to make. What we really want to make sure that we do is the front-facing side that the community sees, that we present really that resident and business services, the front face of the city in a real way. And so we want to make sure that we do that well. So we're reserving some of our budget for that.
Yeah, you may want to show that, Jeff, just to illuminate, I know we've got a little bit, you've got some money reserved for FF&E, but if you go back and show, like the last picture, the one before.
Yeah.
One of the things your design, which is highlighting, is you've raised the ceilings, you're opening it up, you're adding lighting, you're making it more inviting.
That's right.
Opening up the atmosphere, invite.
Lots of glass, lots of windows, lots of view shed into the working space so that we get natural light into the ground floor of the building. That's probably one of the biggest challenges of working down there.
But no glass between one human being and another.
No.
That glass is going to be gone.
Open, yeah, this is just like office wall type things.
That's right.
So glass door there on the right-hand
That's right.
side so you can see what's going on, but it'll be
right.
a front, just a low counter.
When I come pay my tax payment, I'm now talking to Jeff. You and I are
Face to
talking
face.
directly, face to face, without a nice piece
That's
of glass between us.
That's correct.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Jeff or Brian, there was two bids. One was for, I'm gonna say 1.1 million, the other one's 1.2, so I don't wanna read all those numbers. And we're going with a little bit higher bid. Can you give an explanation why?
So it's, oh yeah, thank you. It's important to know that we wrote this proposal that it was going to be best value. So we didn't want to just have to go with the low bid. When both of the bids came in and we reviewed the process by which both consultants or contractors were going to do the work, Crown actually provided not only references, but very detailed examples of what they've done in the past. And we've also worked with them. And so when we compared their proposal to the other proposal, it was only about a $98,000 difference. Felt it's in the best value of the city to go with Crown. So it's paying a little bit more, but I think we're going to get a better product.
Thank you. All right, any further questions, comments regarding this item? Yes, Mayor Wilson?
One comment. Maybe we'll save it for council. This is a big deal. This is a really big deal. Like, there's so many big deals coming across. It's easy just to negate, like, what a big deal is. This is a gigantic deal. One call, that's all. One stop, that's all. Like, that's what this is about. This is about improving the quality of life and the interaction. It's about making the government highly responsive to its people, highly responsive to its businesses, being able to provide solutions in a quicker manner, and understanding that things happen, but that we have a responsibility to help people navigate that quicker and faster. And this is an overall approach. Thank you, Mr. Knight, for your leadership on this, your leadership, Jeff and Brian, the entire teams. This is a big deal, and it's going to really manifest itself. So it's something that you're doing today, that you'll vote on council 13 days ago. You'll begin to see the physical manifestation of this, but the real manifestation of this to its people will continue to be sown for many, many years to come. This is a big deal, so thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, any further questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion to move this forward. Motion by Councilmember Sells, second by Councilmember Johnson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Item number 8, consideration for the mayor and/or city administrator to award contracts to multiple contractors for on-call stormwater lining, and water construction services. Mr. Watson.
Yeah, this is, I think, the item you all have been waiting for tonight.
It is.
So the purpose of this item is to obtain a list of pre-qualified on-call water, stormwater, and stormwater lining contractors. We've had this contract in the past, and it's up, so we're renewing it. The city of Roswell advertised this project. We had 19 proposals that were submitted. We had a review team of 5 people from Environmental Public Works who went through their proposals. Task orders will be issued under this contract by requesting proposals from more than one of the selected contractors. It's actually a way that it kind of speeds up the process when we have issues either on water, stormwater lining.
Yep.
Actually improves the process so that we're basically qualifying all of these contractors. So staff recommends awarding the contracts to the following contractors, and there's a long list there. I'll let that to you, but I'll answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Any questions or comments from Mr. Watson regarding this item? Councilmember Hall?
Just a clarification. So the first 12, there's 12 listed and then 19. I didn't read everything. The 19 are the ones that are being considered, or?
Yeah, there's a list of 12. So there's 19 proposals that we received. Some of those we did not qualify. They
Okay,
did not
so it's
meet
the
our
12
minimum.
that are being qualified.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's all I needed to know.
That's correct, yes. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Any further comments or questions? Yes, Mayor Wilson?
No, Brian, thank you, man. This is so good. Again, seems like a little thing. It's a big growth of management procurement in the city, and being wise steward of your resources, more sophisticated in your approach, very professional, big deal. Thank you very much. Big delivery. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Watson. This is very, very important, and I will underscore Mayor's comments because this does provide latitude and flexibility to respond quicker and to address items of infrastructure in a more concerted effort. And so this is a very important matter for the city. And so thank you, Mr. Watson, for your leadership. Any further comments or questions regarding this item? Seeing none, we'll take a motion by Councilmember Johnson, second by Councilmember Sells. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, that passes unanimously, and we'll move forward. As I alluded to earlier, item number 9 will not be considered this evening. We may bring that back at a later date. And so that does conclude our committee meeting for April 15, 2025. And with that, I will entertain a motion of adjournment. Motion by Councilmember Morthland, second by Councilmember Hills, and everyone else. All in favor? All right. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Have a good evening.